Hey, it's Don the Auction Professor here. Today I'm going to talk about specific prints and engravings that you will find. One specific company I always look for are Currier and Ives. This is an original from the 1800s. The frame may not be, but it is an early one. You can tell by the wood back on it. Again, the frame means nothing when it comes to this, but this is a colored engraving and a print from actually Currier and Ives. The 125 Nassau Street in New York is one of the earlier designations. Some of these are marked, not all of them. They were very popular in the 1870s and 80s. The better ones, as I said, are always hand watercolored to add the color to them. But we're going to go to the screen and we're going to talk specifically about some of the items you can turn over and find and flip really easily in Currier and Ives engraved images. And as I just showed you, Currier and Ives prints do show up. Most of the time, they don't look very good from the ones that I find, or I find them loose in just stacks of junk in attics and things like that. I find them ripped, I find them damaged, I find them with water stains. All of those still will sell, and most people think they aren't worth anything. I get nasty emails a lot these days telling me, you know, no one's going to find this stuff. You're showing obscure things. If you look and you collect or buy or sell collectibles, everything that I show you is something you can find. I don't care what anybody says. There's people every day who text me and you know, message me or put posts or emails or whatever that tell me they found this, they found that. It's all out there. I promise you it's all available. If you're going to give up and think you're never going to find it, you're not going to find it because you're not going to want to look for this stuff. You know, I'm giving you the keys to the door, basically. This is your way into the collectibles market. Knowing these items, every single item I have shown you are items that I personally have sold and do get on a routine. It may not be a ton a year, a ton a month, a ton a week, but I get them routinely, quite often. I sell multiple, more than just one of anything I have shown you. So please take that into consideration. Again, just because you're in clothing now doesn't mean you can't branch out, you can't learn new items, but if you're not going to take the time to look for them or just give up after a couple days going out and not finding them instantly, you're just not going to be expanding your business. Clothing's going to go away at some point, or for the majority of people. In my area, in many areas, my in-laws' areas, there's just nowhere you can buy clothing in a quantity to actually resell. And this is on two different parts of the country. I know people that are having issues across the board. You know, if there's bins and things like that, yeah, you have a good chance, but around here there's no bins. The closest bin store is 3 hours away. I know many people have these issues where their stores closed. Some of the Goodwills are closing. Savers are closing. Salvation Army's got some that are closing. So across the board, a lot of these stores are having issues today, not just because of resellers, but because more people are buying offline, used clothing and such forth, or they're not donating as much because they can sell them when they probably wouldn't have done it before in the past. So it's extra money. It's just like running a garage sale. Many people don't do that anymore. They'll list it online and donate the rest. So just keep that in mind. You've got to know these items, or at least know what to look for to be able to find them. Now with Currier and Ives, I find at least once a month, sometimes 2, 3, 4 at the same time I'll find. Again, if they're ripped, I still list them. I have sold ripped Currier and Ives for 15 or 20 bucks. Even a ripped one, if it's an original and hand watercolored, ripped in half even, or ripped a chunk out or a piece missing, I have still got 15 plus bucks out of every single one I have ever listed, even damaged down to the bone. Most of the time I get 50 to say 175 on average for any given one that I find, as long as it's hand colored. And again, these sometimes you'll find them shoved in books, you'll find them in attics, you'll find them at auctions, you'll find them just junked in with a bunch of paper in lots. It's just a given for us. I've got 2 or 3 right this very second that I got this month. I got in the last 30 days. These are things you can honestly find without too much effort if you spend the time to do it. But enough of that. Let's go into the items here now. Now, it used to just be N Currier. Ives wasn't a part of the picture at one time, and I do find N Currier, it's just N.Currier, marked on many of them. It's a little hard to tell on here, but it is marked N Currier. This is a hand-colored one. All the coloring on here is watercolored. It's the death of George Washington. They put pre-Ives just in case, but most people who are looking to get these will know N Currier without a doubt. It's the earlier incantation of the names, 1840s-ish, maybe 1850s, maybe a little earlier than that for some of them. I don't know the exact history. I just know to buy them. It doesn't matter the history, honestly. As long as it's a good one, a real one, you can see the impression from the plate, or you can see the hand brush marks on it, get it. This is an early example. As I said, this is $150. The frame necessarily does not have to be old or not. It has no bearing on the issue. This is an old frame, maybe not necessarily original, but it is an old frame. So by the looks, I would say it's not original. It's not original to the picture, just by the age. It does not look old enough to be that era. But anyway, still a nice one, $150. Again, I'm not going to show you a ton of this. There's not a ton to know other than to always look for that. Be able to take your loupe and be able to tell if the item was hand colored. That's a big plus for anybody. So much of the information I give you can be brought and used in so many different areas in collectibles. Everything that's hand watercolored or hand tinted is done the same way with a brush. So on postcards, on prints, on Christmas cards, Valentine's cards, inside of books, on maps, you can easily tell the difference from a printed version versus a hand watercolored one. The hand watercolored one or hand tinted one will not have the dots, and that's the big difference. Is many will have the dots. Some of them will not have dots but will not be hand tinted, but you can usually tell because they usually go out of the line. There'll be telltale signs across the board. Once you've seen enough of them, you know, you'll be able to tell as well too. There is an eraser test, which I would never recommend for anybody, but there's another test you can do to verify somewhat that it's real or not. So anyway, let's go on to the next one. This one went for around $200. I believe it was a buy it now, and I think it went for $175. But again, a modern day frame. That's fine. It doesn't matter. I usually don't even mess with the frames. Why risk the glass? I get about the same amount of money whether it's framed or not. Most people will not like the frame that comes with these to begin with, and will want them reframed anyway, unless it's an original. This one's just a give me frame as well too. So let's see if you can see the marks on it. It says original. I'm not sure if this is from a series. There are some reproductions. Print has been professionally cleaned and deacidified 11/26/1995. So this one actually has this one's been conserved, so it's probably mounted on something acid free, stated to be original. You can see the markings are there. Once you've seen them, you can usually tell. There are several addresses for it, but because this one was preserved, it went for $1,400. It costs a lot of money to have them deacidified and to have them cleaned and preserved and mounted in the whole works. So you're paying for the mounts on this one here. If this wasn't done this way, you'd probably get a couple $100 for it, in all honesty. Even from 1861, because there's many 1861s. They did thousands of prints between the two companies and Currier and Ives. I think there's 7,000 or 8,000 different original lithos, engravings they did. Many of them hand watercolored. The earlier ones, as I said, are always the hand watercolored ones. There are some new printed versions. There's reproductions. There's prints and second printings, third printings. There's ones that were printed all the way up into the 50s and 60s. So telling the difference is important. Being able to see the impression marks on from the plate, being able to tell that it's hand watercolored, those are key. Here's an earlier one. This one's nice. There's similar images just like this that were used for Victorian trade cards, Valentine's cards, Christmas cards, just cards in general. Even advertising cards for tobacco were done by Currier and Ives. Horse racing ones, sports-related ones are done by Currier and Ives. Circus prints were done by Currier and Ives. There's many items that you can find by Currier and Ives. This one's $2,200. I believe this one is a scarce one. They don't have any information, unfortunately. This one is a scarce one. It says unlisted. Part of the problem with Currier and Ives is that there were so many of them, and they did them way back when. There's not records of every single one. So in some cases, new ones will show up even to this day, and they go for a ton of money because of that. So again, there are reproductions and there are some phonies, so keep that in mind. This one, I looked at this one closely. It does look legit, so $2,200 isn't a scary price to me. Here's a horse racing one. Now, usually you'll find these cleaned and matted or mounted. I don't remember if this one is. No repairs. Let's see. No, but this does appear to be original. Again, the whiter it is, the more it'll go for. So the better the condition, the higher the price, no matter what. That's just a given on almost anything these days. So just always keep that in mind. The horse racing and the trotters and things like that go for a lot of money. This is framed. It'll go up probably in a lawyer's office. sports collector's room or something along that line. $950 with $75 to ship. More than I would have charged. I wouldn't charge that. I just charge flat whatever it actually costs. Let's see. Here's another early one. Again, no frame, just laid out on the floor on the carpet. You know, some of these I've seen too where people have sold them and it turned out it wasn't a real one and they had to send it back. So again, make sure what you got. You can, you know, send them to some organizations and they'll tell you if they're real. If it's not in a book, most of the like Currier and Ives Foundation will tell you if it's a real one or there are recommendations on it. Just because they like to know if there's any they've missed and don't have. There's several books on them, and some of the items show up that aren't in books, just like the other one with the lady drinking the coffee with the cat. So anyway, $800 on this one. It's a beautiful print. It's in excellent condition. That's the key here. This one has a rip, and even with the rip, $594. Again, I'm telling you, these sell in almost any condition. It's so hard to collect the series of these because there's just so many of them. So I know, you know, collectors that have bought from us that have hundreds and hundreds of these. I've only met one that has a couple thousand. So, you know, it's hard to get a big assortment of these. There's some that are common that show up, you know, and it might take years trying to source even to get a couple hundred good ones. So anyway, I list every one I get. I don't care of the condition as long as it's a legit piece. And again, plate marks, if it's engraved and such forth. You've got to understand this, again, because I talk about many different categories and items, but the engraving and being able to tell if it's an engraved or a lithographied piece are key. Once you've seen these, and again, it doesn't matter whether it's on a card or postcard or whatever it is, it's the same process. So once you know the process, you're good to go. So anyway, and again, these are cross-category items for the most part. And a lot of the items that are description-wise that I talk about, like being able to tell if it's hand-painted, as I've just said earlier in this video, go across whatever item we're talking about. It's the same process for any of these items. They were all printed, done the same way, whether it's a card or anything. So now this one's a circus one here. Damaged, you can see major rips, staining. It may have been trimmed. This was probably like a playbill. $365. 34 bids, modern frame, so the frame is nothing in here as well either. Hand-colored stone lithograph. P.T. Barnum's museum. P.T. Barnum had a museum. I believe it was in New York, if I'm not mistaken. You could go in and pay a fee, and it was there 24/7. And you could buy things at that facility. I have had trade cards from there. I've had other items. I've seen a poster before, and a friend of mine had some items from there as well, too. So the items from this place do show up. So they're, again, not crazy items to find. $365, damaged the way it is. Another one, this is Race on the Mississippi. This is a well-known one. This one's in a book or two, if I'm not mistaken, as well. The imagery, the side paddle steamers are what's in here. It's early. As long as it's an original, stuff like this always sells, as I said. This is something that you would get at an auction for maybe $20 if you're lucky. If it's framed, I usually get them for cheaper from an auction because most people can't tell if they're real. You got to be able to tell, you know, to play with the big boys to some extent on these. But I run into these everywhere. You know, even at antique malls, I have purchased items just like this for very little money. And sometimes they say repro. I'll ask to take them out of the frame. I'll take them out of the frame. Sure enough, they're real. I don't care if they now think they're worth more. The price on the piece said $20. They have to let you have it at that. Anyway, $270 on that one. Trotter's Burial. Here's another one. The colors on this are just superb. It's a nice one. Odd subject matter. Sold from England. $160. General antique print lithograph, I would say. Chromo lithograph. Now, this is different. This is a chromo. But it's still a vintage original piece. So that helps to be key to this. Some people don't know the difference, so it's hard to say. This one could actually be hand tinted now that I look at it. A lot of people don't know that they're hand tinted when they are possibly too. So I would have to look at this one in person, but a lot of these could actually have been originally hand-tinted, and the seller doesn't realize it. I see that quite often. And that's why I can buy them cheap, too, mind you, because people think they're reproductions. There's so many reproductions out there. That's why I say you might run into one every day of your life if you go to certain places like I would go. But, you know, it's few and far between to be able to tell the difference. But as I said, I've got several right now that I bought this month, so it's not a strange item. Trade cards, same thing. I find the trade cards all the time. I've got a half a dozen up right now. I've got another dozen plus in my possession that I haven't listed. $112 for a trade card done by Currier and Ives. This is a chromo one here, though. Another chromo. These Vulcan horseshoes, they're fairly common. This is a common card, but there's a whole series of Currier knives. Usually 1881 is the most common date you'll see on these, but there's a series of these. There's 15 or 20 different ones of these. There's a bunch that were done in 1878, 79, and 1881 that I'll see, and 1883 is another date I'll see, even up to 1888 for these card types. 73 bucks, 7 bids. So again, cards sell just as well. Another one, as I said, tobacco ones are ones I always look for. There's tobacco cards that were issued inside the cigarettes, or bags of tobacco that were marked Currier knives as well. Not just this style, but the smaller tobacco insert size. 10 bids, $54. Another card, harnesses. Usually they're horse and stuff like that. There's a ton of them. Currier knives love the horse aspect of it, and it's sold very well for them. So. And another, just FYI, you don't have to put Currier knives. Your whole sentence, your whole title does not have to make sense at all. It just has to be the keywords. Keyword searches is all I worry about. Sometimes I'll add fab, fabulous, or other words in there that aren't necessarily key. The most important part goes at the header, and the wording like trade card goes at the end. Here's a neat one here. You can see the edges. This one's somewhat damaged. It's been trimmed on the bottom most assuredly from what I see. The edges are chewed up. $285 even in this. They've even got margins trimmed, some margin issues. There's some staining, chipping. There's a couple of rips at the top. There's some holes on the left-hand side. Some of these were in books. Some of these were bound. You know, just it takes a little bit of time to just be able to tell. And you can see like a white area where it wasn't painted there. You can sometimes see where like the green goes over from the grass into the stone or whatever the case may be. There's just telltale signs like that. Usually there'll be a mark below the printed area. Blue won't be all in the blue. They'll miss some. Things like that. This looks, even just from the image here, looks like it's a legit hand colored piece. So again, it's just something we look for all the time. I'll just show you a few more here. Farm scenes. They're all these quaint, folk artish images for the most part. You can see the trees up there. They're out of the sink. They don't match where the leaves are. These were done in mass quantity sometimes. There's thousands of some of these made. So they did them rather quickly, and they were slid to dry, and off they went. That's usually how I find them. People think they're just cheap repros when I see that. And I pick them up fairly cheap, $150. This one's got damage, nail holes, the whole works. It's in a frame, too, and they haven't examined it out of the frame. So it's not an original frame. I would have ripped it out of there in a second to know. Here's a perfect example of the out of the line. You see the blue touches the A of Nassau. Now, another thing you'll have to worry about is, I said, there are some forges on these. And I'll see where somebody has come in and just thrown some paint outside the lines, and then they'll put a $150 tag on it when it's like a $5 print that they've just washed over a little bit. So you will see them. It's very scarce and far between to ever run across those. But I have seen some in some higher dollar stores that were done that way. They may not necessarily have known that they were scammed, but let's move on here. Again, it's not a huge area, but there's hundreds of them up at any time. Another quaint scene. This is typical. There's mass reproductions of these. They've been used for a century plus for many things, even advertising pieces from other companies. $175, 2 bids. Boxing one. This is another one of the key ones here. $175 basically. He took an offer on this. I would have let this one ride. It probably would have went for more. It's a nice one, let's just put it that way. These are fairly scarce. The image itself's not so great, so it's a little hard to sell when the image isn't great. But again, $175. Sports related, as I said, horses, key. These bird ones sell too. Ones like this with the multiple colors that took some time to paint always go for more if they were hand tinted. I would say this is not hand tinted. This is just a chromo on this one here. But still, $125. This type, anyone that looks like this would have been a perfect example for a postcard. And you will see reprints even on postcards. So again, it's just Currier knives and Currier, either one of those written on something can add to the value, but make sure you can tell the difference. It's going to take you some time. You're going to make some errors. Don't panic about that. It's a learning curve just like clothing. But again, I find these all the time, so don't think you're not going to find them. Well, there you go. There's another area of items we look for. We sell Currier knives all the time. At least every other week or so, I'm selling a couple pieces of Currier knives. It's just a matter of knowing which ones are the better ones, knowing how to tell if they're watercolored by hand or just mass-produced ones. Obviously, the earlier non-mass-produced, hand-colored ones are always the best. And even in bad condition, they can still sell. So anyway, that's what I have for you today. Hopefully that gave you some ideas and some thoughts. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button down below. You can also hit the bell icon to be notified when I post new content or go live. Subscribe and tell a friend.